brief time is I've selected readings from each of the 4 waters of prayer from the text. So the structure will be, I'll gong, my singing bowl, then I'll do the reading, and then there'll be some silence after that. So there'll be 5 readings in all, and hopefully I'll do a breath meditation to start so that we can move into a place of meditation, of rest, and as Valentine said, savouring the taste of St. Teresa's writings, the symbols, the taste of prayer, the taste of the inner world of our soul, and the writings of St. Teresa, as all of these great writers, deep nourishment for our soul. So her autobiography was written in 1562. It's a great spiritual classic. If you haven't looked at it, I would strongly encourage you to have a look at it as a guide and help on your own spiritual journey. So what we're going to do now is a breath meditation. So what I'd like you to do, if possible, in your chair, or maybe if you can hear me, to maybe lie down somewhere. So moving into a place of meditation or prayer. Lying down or take your seat. Sitting straight back or on a meditation cushion. Eyes opened or eyes closed. Eyes closed or eyes open, so you're looking down a little bit. Not focusing certainly on the screen or any object, but really going within in your own subjectivity. So just get a sense of where your feet are, feet resting on the ground, placing your hands, palms up on your thighs, or if you're lying on the floor beside you. And begin to notice and follow your breath. Just be aware of your body at this moment. So we've had a lot of wonderful input and reflection this morning. So we're coming to our bodies now, our breath. Notice your breath. Bring your attention to your out breath, the breathing out, and try to lengthen breathing out. And as we're aware of our out breath, just be aware of our breath dissolving in the space around you in your room. Just a sense of your own environment, the sensation, the being of being present to your body, the space, feelings, what's happening in your mind. Bring your attention to the whole of our sensation. So this breathing, when we breathe out, just rest until the next in-breath naturally begins. So resting in our breath. And usually our muscles begin to rest and relax. We're not doing any work, we're resting. We're still, we're being in presence. And if you've got a lot buzzing in your mind, just bring your attention to your breath, the in and the out breath. Just relaxing this afternoon. So the first reading is on Teresa's allegory of the 4 waters of prayer. A beginner must look on themselves as one setting out to make a garden for their Lord's pleasure on most unfruitful soil which abounds in weeds. His Majesty roots up the weeds and will put in good plants instead. Let us reckon this is already done when a soul decides to practice prayer and has begun to do so. We have then, as good gardeners with God's help, to make these plants grow and to water them carefully so they don't die but produce flowers which give out a good smell to delight this Lord of ours. Then he will often come to take his pleasure in this garden and enjoy these virtues. Now let us see how the garden is to be watered so that we may understand what we have to do, what labour it costs us, whether the gain outweighs the effort or how long it will take. The garden may be watered in 4 different ways. Either the water is drawn from a well, which is very laborious, or by a water wheel and buckets worked by windlass. I've sometimes drawn it this way, which is less laborious than the other and brings up more water. Or it may flow from a stream or spring, which waters the ground much better, for the soul then retains more moisture and needs watering less often, which entails far less work for the gardener. Or by heavy rain, when the Lord waters it himself without any labour of ours. And this is an incomparably better method than the rest. The first water. We may say that beginners in prayer are those who draw the water up out of the well, which is a great labour, for they find it very tiring to keep the senses recollected when they're used to a life of distraction. Beginners often have to accustom themselves to pay no attention to what they see or hear, and put this exercise into practice during their hours of prayer. This is what I mean by beginning to draw water from the well, and God grant there may be water in it. But at least it doesn't depend on us. We have only to draw it up and do what we can to water the flowers. He preserves the flowers without water, and in this way he makes our virtues grow. Here by water I mean tears, or if there be none, a tenderness and inward feeling of devotion. chapter 14. Let us now turn to the second method of drawing it, which the owner of the plot has ordained. By means of a device with a windlass, the gardener draws more water with less labour, and so is able to take some rest instead of continuously at work. This is my description for the prayer of quiet. Now the soul begins to be recollected and comes into touch with the supernatural, to which it could not possibly attain by its own efforts. Sometimes it seems to have grown weary through turning the wheel and toiling with its mind and filling the buckets. But now the level of the water is higher, and so much less labour is required than for drawing it from a well. I mean that the water is closer because grace reveals itself more clearly to the soul. This entails a gathering of the faculties within oneself so as to derive a greater savour from that pleasure. Everything that happens now brings very great consolation and costs so little labour that even if prayer is continued for some time, it brings no weariness. The intellect now works very gently and draws up a great deal more water than it drew from the well. The tears that God sends now are shed with joy. Although we're conscious of them, they're not of our getting. This water of great blessings and favours which the Lord now gives us makes the virtues grow incomparably more than they did in the previous state of prayer. For His Majesty is beginning to communicate Himself to the soul and would have it feel how He is communicating Himself. From chapter 16. Let us now go on to speak of the third water that feeds this garden, which is flowing water from a stream or spring. This irrigates it with far less trouble, though some effort is required to direct it into the right channel. But now the Lord is pleased to help the gardener in such a way as to be, as it were, the gardener himself. For it is He who does everything. The pleasure, the sweetness and delight are incomparably more than in the previous state. For the water of grace has risen to the soul's neck, and it is powerless, knowing neither how to advance or retreat. What it wants is to enjoy its very great glory. It takes unutterable delight in the enjoyment of its agony, which seems to me like nothing else but an almost complete death to all things of the world, and a fulfillment in God. I know of no other words with which to describe or explain it. The soul doesn't know what to do. It can't tell whether to speak or be silent, whether to laugh or weep. It is a glorious bewilderment, a heavenly madness, in which true wisdom is acquired, and to the soul a fulfillment most full of delight. The soul longs to pour out words of praise. It is a sweet unrest and cannot contain itself. The flowers are opening and beginning to give off scent. May the Lord teach me words which to convey some idea of the fourth water. It retains the sense to know that it is still here and to feel its solitude. Throughout, in every stage of prayer, the gardener performs some labour, but the labour now is accompanied by so much comfort and bliss to the soul that it would never willingly abandon it. So the labour is felt as bliss. I'm now speaking of that rain which comes down abundantly from heaven to soak and saturate the whole garden. If the Lord never ceased to send it whenever it was needed, the gardener would certainly have leisure. If there were no winter but always a temperate climate, there would never be a shortage of fruit and flowers. So this heavenly rain very often comes down when the gardener least expects it. The Lord is now taking up this small bird and putting it into the nest where it may be quiet. He has watched it fluttering for a long time, trying with its understanding and will and all its strength to find God and please him. And now he is pleased to give it its reward in this life. If you'd like to bring some feeling back into your hands and feet, coming out of the meditation now, moving around a little bit perhaps. If you're lying down, maybe begin to move and prepare ourselves for the next session this afternoon. Taking a few deeper breaths in, trying to retain the savour of the waters within you, the taste. And slowly bring yourselves back into the Zoom room.
Well, thank you very much, Julienne, for that wonderful meditation. I must say, from my point of view, it worked wonderfully because we had the first rain here for about 2 months. As a gardener, I've spent the last, yesterday, in fact, I was dragging buckets of water up to the allotment. So I'm extremely grateful to you. I think I'm going to hand back to Dominic. It's like being a DJ, isn't it?
Thank you very much, Peter. And thank you so much, Julienne. I felt very blessed by that meditation after just such a busy week as well. And maybe, I don't know if it's because I'm a Dominican, a line from St. Thomas Aquinas, in fact, came to me, which has been very important when I teach Aquinas. When following Aristotle, he says that all knowledge comes to us through the senses. Now, of course, I mean, that's obviously through our ears. You were leading us through meditation, but also through our breath. And it really did help the rain of grace to sink in. So thank you. I think that for all of us, you have helped our meditation, our prayer.